There are situations that leave you drained, confused, and questioning yourself. You walk away from certain conversations feeling smaller than before, unsettled, even though nothing obvious was said. Something felt off, not loud, not visible, but real. You try to explain it, but the words don't come easily, so you ignore it. You move on, and yet it keeps happening. I remember times when I couldn't understand why I felt so uneasy around certain people. It wasn't clear, but it was consistent. The Bible does not ignore these kinds of experiences. It shows us that not every influence is obvious, and not every struggle is visible on the surface. In 1 Kings 21, we see how subtle pressure and manipulation can unfold quietly but lead to serious consequences. This is not just a story, it reveals patterns that still exist. And yet, Scripture does not lead us into fear. It leads us into awareness, into clarity, into discernment. This is not about labeling people or reacting emotionally. It is about learning to recognize what is not aligned with truth and responding in a way that remains steady. In this message, we will walk through what the Bible reveals, carefully, honestly, and with humility, so you can begin to see more clearly what may have once felt confusing. Number 1, recognizing patterns of control and manipulation. As you begin to look more carefully, certain patterns start to repeat. It is not always direct. There are no obvious commands, no loud demands. Instead, it feels subtle, pressure that is hard to explain, conversations that leave you confused, situations where you feel guided in a direction you did not clearly choose. Over time, you may notice that your clarity begins to fade when you are around certain influences. The Bible gives a clear example of this kind of pattern in 1 Kings 21. Jezebel does not act openly at first. She works through influence, through planning, through shaping the situation around Naboth without his awareness. It is not force, it is manipulation. In 1 Kings 21:7 it says, "Dost thou now govern the kingdom of Israel? Arise and eat bread, and let thine heart be merry. I will give thee the vineyard of Naboth." This shows how control can be exercised indirectly, by taking over a situation and guiding it toward a desired outcome. What makes this difficult to recognize is that it often feels reasonable in the moment. The words may sound logical, the direction may seem justified, but something deeper feels unsettled. That quiet discomfort is often the first sign that something is not aligned. Discernment in this area grows slowly. You begin to notice when decisions feel influenced rather than freely made. You become aware of when conversations leave you uncertain instead of clear. You start to recognize when your sense of peace is consistently disturbed. This does not lead you to react harshly or accuse quickly. Instead, it invites you to observe more carefully, to step back internally and ask, is this leading toward truth or away from it? In practical terms, this may mean slowing down your responses, not agreeing immediately, and giving yourself space to think clearly. It may also mean paying attention to how you feel after certain interactions, not just during them. Over time, this awareness becomes clearer. You begin to see patterns instead of isolated moments. And once you start to recognize these patterns, you naturally become more attentive, not only to what is happening, but to how truth is being handled within those situations. Number 2, a resistance to truth and accountability. As patterns of control become clearer, another sign often appears alongside them, a resistance to truth. Not always openly, but consistently. When truth is introduced, it is avoided, redirected, or quietly dismissed. There is a subtle shift away from clarity and toward confusion. In the biblical account, this can be seen in how truth is not upheld, but replaced. In 1 Kings 21, for him, false witnesses are arranged to speak against Naboth, and set 2 men, sons of Belial, before him to bear witness against him. This is not just manipulation. It is a direct opposition to truth. Instead of allowing what is right to stand, something false is introduced to take its place. This kind of resistance may not always appear in such an obvious form today. It can be much quieter. Conversations may change direction when truth is mentioned. Honest questions may not be answered directly. Accountability may be avoided through deflection or silence. Discernment helps you notice these shifts. You begin to see when truth is not being welcomed, but managed. When clarity is replaced with uncertainty. When straightforward answers become complicated. This does not mean confronting every situation immediately. The Bible does not call for constant correction, but for awareness. Recognizing this pattern allows you to remain grounded, rather than being drawn into confusion. In daily life, this may look like noticing when conversations leave you with more questions than answers. It may mean recognizing when responsibility is consistently shifted away instead of acknowledged. These moments, when repeated, begin to form a clear pattern. Over time, this awareness strengthens your ability to stay aligned with truth, even when others do not. You begin to value clarity more deeply, and you become less willing to ignore what feels consistently misaligned. And as this clarity grows, you start to notice something else. Not just resistance to truth, but the use of pressure to maintain control when truth begins to surface. Number 3, the use of intimidation rather than truth. As resistance to truth becomes clearer, the next pattern often reveals itself through pressure. When truth begins to surface, and cannot be easily avoided, the atmosphere can shift. What was once subtle becomes more forceful, not always through direct confrontation, but through intimidation. It may come through tone, urgency, or the unspoken message that speaking up will lead to consequences. The Bible shows this clearly in 1 Kings chapter 19:2, when Jezebel sends a message to Elijah, "So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time." This is not a conversation. It is a threat. It is an attempt to silence truth through fear rather than engage with it honestly. In everyday life, intimidation does not always look this extreme. It can be much quieter. It may appear as tension in a room when certain topics are raised. It may be a shift in someone's tone that makes you hesitate. It may be the feeling that if you continue speaking, something will change negatively. Discernment helps you recognize this shift. You begin to see when the goal is no longer clarity, but control. When truth is not being discussed, but suppressed. And when fear is subtly introduced to keep things from being questioned. This awareness is important because intimidation can affect how you respond. It can cause you to withdraw, to stay silent, or to second-guess what you know is right. But recognizing it allows you to step back internally and remain steady. You do not need to react immediately. You do not need to match the intensity. Instead, you remain grounded. You observe. You choose your response carefully, or sometimes choose not to respond at all in that moment. Over time, this strengthens your ability to stay aligned with truth, even when the environment becomes uncomfortable. You are no longer easily moved by pressure. You begin to understand that truth does not need force to stand. It remains steady on its own. And as you grow in this steadiness, another layer of discernment begins to form, learning to distinguish between what is simply strong in personality and what is truly harmful in influence. Number 4. Distinguishing between strong personality and harmful influence. Not every strong presence is harmful. Not every confident voice carries wrong intention. This is where discernment becomes more refined. It is no longer just about recognizing what feels uncomfortable, but understanding why it feels that way. Some people are naturally bold, direct, or assertive. They speak clearly, act decisively, and carry strong opinions. This, in itself, is not wrong. The Bible shows many examples of strong individuals who were aligned with truth. Strength becomes harmful only when it begins to control, distort, or override what is right. Discernment helps you see the difference. A strong personality can still respect truth. It can listen. It can allow space for others. But harmful influence begins to close that space. It redirects, pressures, and subtly reshapes situations to maintain control. The difference is not always visible at first, but over time, it becomes clear through patterns. In Scripture, the issue was not simply that Jezebel was strong, it was how that strength was used. It moved against truth, not with it. It replaced what was right with what was desired. This is where careful observation matters. You begin to notice not just how someone speaks, but what their words produce. Do they bring clarity or confusion? Do they allow truth to stand, or do they reshape it? Do they create peace or tension? This kind of discernment requires patience. It does not rush to label or conclude. It watches over time. It looks for consistency. In practical life, this may mean giving yourself permission to observe without immediately deciding, to notice patterns without reacting too quickly, to allow clarity to develop rather than forcing it. And as that clarity forms, your response becomes more grounded. You are no longer reacting to personality. You are responding to alignment with truth. This naturally leads to the next step, where discernment is no longer only about recognizing, but about choosing how to respond in a way that remains steady and rooted. Number 5, responding with truth instead of reaction. As clarity begins to take shape, the focus shifts from what you see to how you respond. This is where many people struggle. When something feels wrong, the natural reaction is to respond quickly, emotionally, defensively, or even forcefully. But discernment does not lead to reaction. It leads to steadiness. The Bible calls believers to stand, not react. In Ephesians 6:13 it says, "Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand." Notice the emphasis is not on attacking or responding impulsively, but on standing firm. This changes everything. Instead of being pulled into the tension of a situation, you remain grounded. You do not mirror pressure with pressure. You do not answer confusion with more confusion. You hold your position quietly, clearly, and without unnecessary force. In practical terms, this may look like choosing your words carefully, or choosing silence when needed. It may mean not engaging in conversations that are designed to pull you off balance. It may also mean speaking truth calmly, without trying to prove or win. This kind of response is not weakness, it is control. It shows that you are not being led by the situation, but by clarity. You are no longer reacting to what is happening. You are responding from a place that is steady. Over time, this becomes your pattern. Situations that once caused emotional responses no longer have the same effect. You begin to notice that your peace remains intact, even when the environment around you is unsettled. This steadiness also protects you. Quick reactions often create consequences that linger, but a measured response keeps you aligned, both internally and externally. And as you continue to respond this way, you begin to understand that discernment is not only about what is happening around you, it is also about what you allow to remain within you. Number 6, guarding your heart and mind. Once you begin to respond with steadiness, you realize something deeper. External influence only becomes powerful when it is allowed to settle internally. This is why guarding your heart and mind becomes essential. The Bible speaks directly to this in Proverbs 4:23. "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." This is not just about emotions. It is about what you allow to take root within you: thoughts, impressions, and internal responses. Situations may still happen, conversations may still feel unclear, but discernment teaches you not to carry everything with you. You begin to separate what you experience from what you absorb. This is important because repeated exposure to pressure, confusion, or manipulation can slowly affect how you think. It can cause doubt, hesitation, or even self-questioning. Guarding your heart means you do not allow those patterns to settle inside. In practical life, this may look like taking time to reset after difficult interactions. It may mean returning to Scripture, allowing truth to replace confusion. It may also mean creating distance from situations that consistently disrupt your peace. This is not avoidance, it is protection. You begin to notice that your inner state becomes more stable. You are less affected by shifting situations. You are not easily pulled into emotional cycles that once felt overwhelming. Over time, this creates clarity. Your thoughts become more grounded, your decisions become more intentional, and your sense of direction becomes more steady. And from this place of inner stability, you are able to take the next step, not just guarding what is within you, but also choosing how to move forward with wisdom and clear boundaries. Number 7, trusting God while maintaining clear boundaries. As your inner stability grows, you begin to understand that discernment is not only about recognizing and guarding, it is also about choosing how to move forward. Not every situation needs confrontation. Not every influence needs a response, but every situation does require wisdom. This is where trust in God and clear boundaries come together. The Bible reminds us in James 1:5, "If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally." This shows that you are not expected to figure everything out on your own. Discernment is not pressure, it is guidance, and wisdom comes as you remain steady and attentive. Boundaries in this context are not harsh or defensive. They are clear. You begin to recognize what you can engage with and what you should step back from. You understand that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is necessary to remain aligned with truth. In practical terms, this may look like limiting certain conversations, creating distance from repeated patterns, or choosing not to participate in situations that consistently lead to confusion. These decisions are not reactions. They are responses shaped by clarity. You also begin to release the need to control outcomes. You are no longer trying to fix every situation or correct every person. Instead, you trust that truth stands on its own, and that God sees what is not always visible. This brings a different kind of peace. You are not constantly analyzing or defending. You are steady. You are aware but not overwhelmed. You are present but not entangled. Over time, these boundaries become natural. You do not need to explain them constantly. You simply live them, and in doing so, you remain grounded in truth without being pulled into what is not aligned. This quiet balance between awareness, restraint, and trust becomes the foundation of a life that is no longer controlled by confusion, but guided by clarity. Conclusion: walking in clarity without fear. Discernment is not about seeing everything perfectly. It is about learning to see clearly enough to remain steady. What once felt confusing begins to make sense, not all at once, but gradually, through awareness, reflection, and alignment with truth. You no longer feel the need to react quickly or prove anything. You learn to pause, to observe, and to respond with calmness. Situations that once unsettled you no longer have the same hold, not because they disappear, but because you are no longer moved by them in the same way. This kind of clarity does not make you distant, it makes you grounded. You become more thoughtful, more patient, and more aware of what truly matters. And as you continue walking this path, you begin to trust that you are not navigating alone. You are being guided, quietly, steadily, toward truth that does not shift. In that place, there is no need for fear. Only clarity, balance, and a peace that remains even when everything around you does not.